My husband's sister texted him at 6:47 on a Thursday morning. I know the exact time because I was still half asleep, reaching for my water glass on the nightstand, when I heard his phone buzz twice in quick succession. He was already awake. I could tell by the way he was lying too still, that particular kind of stillness that isn't rest. He grabbed the phone before I could fully open my eyes. I watched him through my lashes. His face changed when he read the message. Not dramatically. My husband, Cal, wasn't a dramatic person. It was subtle, a slight tension in his jaw, his thumb moving quickly, typing something back. Then he set the phone face down on his chest and stared at the ceiling. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he cleared his throat. "It's just Bridget. Family stuff." I waited. My parents are doing something for my dad's birthday next weekend, up at the lake house. I sat up a little. My in-laws had a cabin on Lake Winnebago that they'd owned since before Cal was born. The whole family treated it like a sacred place. I'd been there exactly 3 times in 6 years of marriage, always feeling like a guest who hadn't quite been cleared for entry. "That sounds nice," I said. "Are we going?" There it was again. That flicker. Fast. Almost invisible. He moved his phone from his chest to the nightstand without looking at me. "It's just gonna be the immediate family. Low key. You know how Dad gets overwhelmed with too many people around his birthday. His father, Don, was a retired civil engineer who had exactly 0 problems being around people. He'd once held court at Thanksgiving for 4 hours straight, telling the same 3 stories to anyone who would listen. But I let it go. "Of course," I said. "I can see if Ren wants to do something." "Perfect." He kissed me on the forehead and got up to shower. I lay there listening to the water run, staring at the ceiling the same way he had, trying to locate the feeling in my chest. It wasn't hurt, exactly. The feeling in my chest. It wasn't hurt, exactly. It was something older than that. More familiar. My sister-in-law Bridget had never hidden the fact that she found me vaguely disappointing as a choice for her brother. She was pleasant enough to my face. The kind of pleasant that came with an expiration date, always a few degrees cooler than warmth. Their mother, Elaine, was more practiced at the performance. She remembered my coffee order and forgot everything else. I'd told myself for years that it was just their dynamic. Some families operated like a closed system, and outsiders had to earn their way in slowly. Cal loved me. That was the thing I kept returning to, the thing I held on to. Cal loved me. Ren was my closest friend from college, the kind of person who answered the phone at midnight and showed up with wine 20 minutes later. When I called her that afternoon, she answered on the second ring. "Girls' weekend," I said. "Cal's doing a family thing and I'm suddenly free." "My cousin has a place in Asheville," she said immediately. "She's been asking me to come for months. Let me call her." By that evening, we had a reservation. 3 nights in a farmhouse outside of town, a place with a wraparound porch and a fire pit and, according to the listing photos, a genuinely impressive bathtub. I felt something loosen in my chest when I booked it. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding myself until I wasn't. That weekend arrived the way those weekends do. Thursday felt endless. Friday morning dragged, and then suddenly Cal was loading an overnight bag into his truck and I was standing in the driveway saying goodbye. I noticed his shirt. It was a button-down I'd never seen before. Deep charcoal gray, clearly new, with a collar that sat in that particular way that meant it had been steamed. Cal wore t-shirts and flannel on weekends. He wore flannel to his own brother's graduation party. He wore a t-shirt to his cousin's 4th of July wedding, which admittedly was held in a backyard, but still. "New shirt?" I asked. He glanced down like he'd forgotten he was wearing it. "Oh yeah, picked it up last week. It's nice, thanks." He hugged me, shorter than usual. "Have fun in Asheville. I'll call you tonight." He didn't call that night. He texted around 9 long day, crashing early. "Talk tomorrow, love you." And I told myself it was fine. The farmhouse was everything the photos had promised. Ren's cousin Margot met us at the door with a bottle of local rosé and an immediate, easy warmth that made me feel like I'd known her for years. We stayed up too late the first night, talking on the porch with the fire pit going, and I slept better than I had in weeks. Saturday morning, I woke up first. Made coffee in Margot's ancient percolator, wrapped myself in a blanket on the porch swing, and opened Instagram out of pure habit. The way you check the weather before you're fully awake? Not because you need to know anything, but because your thumb already knows the motion. My mother-in-law had posted. She wasn't a frequent poster, maybe once a month, usually something from her garden or a quote about perseverance that she'd screenshot from somewhere else. So seeing a new post from her stopped my scrolling. It was a photo of a table, not just any table, a long, beautifully set table in what looked like a private dining room. The kind with coffered ceilings and sconces and those tall tapered candles that you only see at events where someone has hired an event planner. White linens, low floral arrangements in blush and ivory, gold-rimmed charger plates catching the candlelight. Her caption read, "Celebrating our family's greatest gift." So proud, so full. I set down my coffee. I zoomed in on the background. At the far end of the table, I could see Bridget in a dress I'd never seen her wear. A deep wine color, fitted, the kind of thing you wear when photographs are going to be taken. Next to her was a man I didn't recognize, leaning toward her with the easy familiarity of someone who had been given permission to lean. Her hand was on the table between them. I went to Bridget's profile. The first photo she'd posted in weeks was from the night before. Timestamp, 8:37 p.m. While I was sitting on a farmhouse porch in Asheville drinking rosé, my sister-in-law had posted a carousel of photographs from what was clearly, unmistakably, an engagement dinner. The first photo, her and the man, and now I saw the ring, a round solitaire on a thin band, her hand turned slightly toward the camera. She was beaming. He was beaming. Everyone in the background was beaming. The second photo, a group shot, the whole family arranged around that long candlelit table, dressed like they had somewhere to be. Elaine in a cream blazer, Dawn in a suit jacket, Cal's aunt and uncle from Madison, Cal's cousins from Green Bay. And there at the far left of the frame, my husband, in that charcoal button-down I'd never seen before, his arm around his mother's shoulders, his smile the widest I'd seen in months. He was giving a toast in the third photo, standing, glass raised, looking at his sister with an expression I can only describe as genuinely, unguardedly happy. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen him look like that at home. I put my phone down on the porch railing. I picked up my coffee. I put it down too. The thing about discovering a lie isn't the moment of discovery itself. It's the 2 seconds after, when your brain is still running the old software, still operating on the assumption that the world is the way you thought it was, and then the new information arrives and everything has to rearrange. It takes longer than you think. Even when the evidence is sitting right in front of you, some part of you is still scrolling back through every conversation, every reassurance, every just family stuff, looking for the place where this version of events could still somehow be true. It wasn't. I called Cal. It rang 4 times. Voicemail. I texted, "Call me when you can." 7 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Not a call, a text. In the middle of something. Everything okay? In the middle of something. At his father's birthday weekend. At the lake house. Low key. Just the immediate family. I put my phone in my pocket and went back inside to make breakfast. Wren was already in the kitchen, and she had the particular radar for human distress that comes from 20 years of friendship. She looked at me once and said, "What happened?" It wasn't a question. I told her. I showed her the photos. I watched her face go through the same rearrangement mine had and then settle into something quiet and careful. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I don't even know what to do with it," I said, which was the truth. "You don't have to do anything with it yet." We went to a farmer's market that morning. We ate breakfast tacos from a food truck. We walked through a neighborhood with old trees and Victorian houses, and I tried to just be there, in that moment, in my own body, instead of 300 miles north at a table I wasn't invited to sit at. It mostly worked. But by afternoon, something had shifted. We were on the porch again. Margot was inside on a work call, and Wren was reading, and I was sitting with my phone in my hand looking at the photos again. Not obsessively. Or maybe obsessively, I don't know. I was trying to understand something. I was trying to find the logic in a choice that made no sense to me. Bridget was engaged. She had apparently been engaged to this man. His name was Todd. I'd learned from the tagged accounts, and he was some kind of contractor, and he looked genuinely kind in every photo, which somehow made this worse. And this had been a whole event, a planned, catered, extended family event. And no one had thought to include me, not even my husband. Ren had taken a photo of me earlier at the farmer's market. I'd been standing in front of a display of sunflowers, wearing the yellow linen shirt I'd bought myself last spring, and the light had been doing something generous with my hair, and I looked like a person who was okay. More than okay. I looked like a person who belonged exactly where she was. I opened Instagram. I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds. Then I posted the photo with the caption, "Spent the weekend somewhere I was actually wanted." Turns out that changes everything. I didn't tag a location. I didn't name anyone. I didn't say a single word that wasn't the simple, plain truth. Ren looked up from her book. She'd seen me typing. She read the caption over my shoulder and was quiet for a moment. "That's going to land," she said. "I know. You sure?" I looked at the photo. The sunflowers, the light, the expression on my face that I hadn't been wearing at home. "Yeah," I said. "I'm sure." The first notification came in 4 minutes. A coworker. "Love this energy." Then a college friend. "Yellow is so your color." Then Ren's cousin Margot from inside the house shouted, "Did you just post something? My sister just texted me about it." And then my phone rang. "Cal." I stared at his name on the screen for a full ring cycle. Then I answered. "Hey," I said. "What is that supposed to mean?" His voice was tight in a way I recognized. Not quite anger, not quite panic, the particular register he used when something had gone wrong that he hadn't planned for. "It means exactly what it says. Nora." He almost never used my name. "People are asking questions. My mom saw it and Can you please just take it down?" There was a sound in the background. Music, maybe. The low murmur of a gathering. I thought about his face in that photo. Open and unguarded, giving a toast at his sister's engagement dinner while I was packing a bag for a girls' trip he'd arranged for me to take. "No," I said. "I don't think I will." Silence. "We'll talk about this when I'm home," he said finally. "Sure," I said. "We will." I hung up and sat with the phone in my lap. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. Ren put her hand over mine without saying anything. 5 minutes later, a DM from Bridget. "Seriously, you're going to make this about yourself?" I read it 3 times. Make this about yourself. As if I'd shown up uninvited and made a scene. As if I'd done anything other than post a photo of myself at a farmer's market. I didn't respond. I screenshotted it instead. Then came a text from my mother-in-law. Not a call. A text, which told me something about how much she wanted to actually have this conversation. "Nora, I think it would be best if you removed your post. This is a happy time for our family, and we prefer to keep it that way." Our family. I'd been married to her son for 6 years. I'd sat at her Thanksgiving table and learned which topics made her uncomfortable and brought the exact side dish she liked and remembered every one of her friends' names when they came up in conversation. And I was not, apparently, part of our family when there was a party to attend. I put my phone in my back pocket and went inside to help Margot make dinner. We made pasta from scratch. The 4 of us. Margot had a pasta maker clamped to the counter and strong opinions about resting time and flour ratios, and I found myself genuinely absorbed in the physical work of something that had nothing to do with any of this. We ate on the porch as the sun went down, and Margot told a story about a disastrous camping trip that made me laugh until my eyes watered, and somewhere in the middle of all of it I thought, this is what it feels like to be somewhere you're actually wanted. The next morning, Sunday, I drove home. I'd been planning to leave Monday, but something in me needed to get there before I lost whatever clarity I'd found. I stopped at a coffee shop just off the highway, sat in my car for a while, and let myself think through what I was going to say. The strange thing about a lie this specific is that it isn't just one lie. It's a series of smaller choices: the deleted text, the new shirt, the kiss on the forehead, the voicemail, the crashing early. Love you. Each one a small brick in a wall built to keep me from knowing something that everyone else already knew. And the person who built that wall wasn't his mother. She'd made her position clear for years through 100 small exclusions. The person who built that wall was Cal. He was home when I got there. His truck was in the driveway. I pulled in beside it and sat for a moment looking at our house, the window boxes I planted last spring, the front porch with the 2 chairs we bought at an estate sale, the whole ordinary exterior of a life I'd been building with someone who apparently felt it was easier to lie to me than to stand up for me. He was in the kitchen. He looked like he hadn't slept. Good, I thought, and then felt a little ashamed of thinking it. Hey, he said. Hey. He'd been preparing something to say, I could tell. There was that posture again, the crossed arms, the practiced expression. But whatever he'd rehearsed fell apart when he actually saw my face. I'm sorry, he said. Not the defensive kind of sorry. The kind that sounds like it cost something. I should have told you. I should have. Why didn't you tell me? It's complicated. Start with the uncomplicated part. He sat down at the kitchen table. I stayed standing. Mom didn't want it to be an issue, he said. She and Bridget were stressed about the planning, and she said she thought it would be easier if I didn't know. If there weren't any tension. Tension. I let the words sit there. What tension, Cal? What tension have I ever created at a family event? He didn't answer. I want to know, I said, because I've been trying to figure out what I did wrong for 6 years. I've been showing up and bringing things and learning your family's preferences and trying to make myself fit into a space they've never actually made for me. So I want to know what specific tension your mother was worried about. It's not about anything you did. Then what is it about? He looked at his hands. She has a picture in her head of how things should be, and she's had it for a long time. And He stopped. And you made it easier for her, I said, instead of harder. Instead of saying, my wife is coming, that's the end of it. The silence was longer this time. Did you fight for me at all? I asked. When she said she didn't want me there, did you tell her that wasn't acceptable? He didn't answer, which was its own answer. I'd brought something home from Asheville, a small jar of local honey I'd picked up at the farmer's market, the kind with a hand-lettered label. I'd been planning to put it on the counter as a little reminder of the weekend. Instead, I set it on the kitchen table between us. I put a card in your bag before you left, I said. I wrote you a note. I said I hoped you had a good time. His expression shifted. Did you read it before or after the toast? He closed his eyes. Nora, I'm not asking that to hurt you. I genuinely want to know what it felt like to read that and then stand up at that table and give a speech. I felt terrible, he said quietly. Good, I said, and I meant it, and I didn't feel ashamed of meaning it this time. You should have. I went upstairs to our room. I didn't throw anything, didn't slam any doors. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while, and then I called my sister. My younger sister, Petra, had a way of listening that made you feel heard without making you feel handled. She didn't say much while I talked, just small sounds of acknowledgement, and when I finished, she was quiet for a moment and then said, What do you need? I need to not be in this house right now. Come here, she said. She lived 20 minutes away with her husband and their dog, an enormous, deeply stupid golden retriever named Biscuit, who had always been extremely enthusiastic about my presence. I'll make dinner. You stay as long as you need. I packed a bag. Cal appeared in the doorway when he heard me in the closet. You don't have to leave, he said. I know. I folded a sweater carefully. But I'm going to. Where are you going? Petra's. He leaned against the doorframe. He looked like he wanted to say something that would fix it, and the sad thing was that there wasn't anything to say. There's no sentence long enough to fill the gap between what someone does and what they should have done. I'd learned that from watching his family operate for 6 years, the way they smoothed over things with careful words and pretended the smoothing was the same as healing. I'll call you, I said. Nora. His voice broke slightly on my name. I love you. I know that doesn't fix this. It doesn't, I agreed, but I know it's true. That's the part that makes this so hard. Biscuit greeted me at Petra's door like I'd been gone for years, which was the right amount of enthusiasm for the situation. Petra had made soup, the kind with white beans and kale and a Parmesan rind simmered into it, and we ate at her kitchen table and talked until nearly midnight. And when I finally fell asleep in her guest room, I thought I wouldn't be able to, but I did. deeply, heavily, like my body had been waiting for permission. The comments on my Instagram post were still accumulating when I woke up. I hadn't expected that. It wasn't a dramatic post, wasn't an accusation, just a photo of a woman in a yellow shirt standing in front of sunflowers. But something in it had apparently landed. Women I didn't know were tagging their friends. This is it. This is the thing I've been trying to say for years. A woman named Deborah from Ohio had left a comment that got 63 likes. My ex-husband's family excluded me from his sister's baby shower. He let them. When I asked him why, he said it was easier this way. Easier for everyone but me. I read it and felt something I wasn't expecting. Not solidarity exactly. Something more like recognition. Like looking at someone else's blueprint and realizing your house was built from the same design. There were other messages too. One from Bridget that I didn't open. One from my mother-in-law that I read once and then archived. I hope you understand that our intention was never to hurt you. We simply thought it was best given the circumstances. Given the circumstances. I turned those 3 words over for a while. The circumstances were that she had never fully accepted me, had spent 6 years operating on the assumption that her discomfort outweighed my dignity, and had raised a son who had learned to prioritize her comfort over his wife's. Those were the circumstances. I didn't reply. Cal and I talked on the phone every day that week. They were hard conversations, the kind where you circle the same territory from different angles, trying to find the version where things make more sense. He said he'd been in denial about how bad it had gotten. He said he told himself that keeping the peace was the same as protecting me, and he understood now that it wasn't. He said he called his mother and told her that things had to change. I believed him. I also knew that believing someone and trusting them were 2 different things, and that trust was something he was going to have to rebuild over time, in small increments, through action rather than words. I went back to our house on Thursday. Not permanently. I wasn't ready for that, but to have a real conversation in person, without a phone between us. He'd cleaned the kitchen, he bought flowers, which I thought was probably the wrong gesture, but I appreciated the intention. He'd also, and this was the thing that actually mattered, sent me a text earlier that day that said, "I called Bridget. I told her that how she spoke to you in that DM was not okay, and that if she wants a relationship with my wife, she needs to treat you like one." I didn't know what Bridget had said back. I didn't ask. It was enough that he'd made the call. We sat at the kitchen table. The honey from Asheville was still there, between us, and I noticed him notice it. "That from the market?" he asked. "Yeah." He nodded. We were quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about something," I said. "About the note I put in your bag." He waited. "I used to do things like that because I thought if I just loved you loudly enough, it would fill in the gaps, the places where your family's acceptance wasn't. Like if there was enough warmth coming from my direction, I wouldn't notice how cold it was from theirs." I turned the honey jar in my hands. "That's not fair to either of us." "No," he said quietly. "It's not. I need you to actually be on my side. Not just privately. Not just in theory. Actually, visibly, without me having to ask. I know. I need you to choose me, Cal, not instead of your family. I'm not asking you to do that, but with me. I need to be the person you choose to stand beside, not the person you hide for convenience." He reached across the table and put his hand over mine, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't pull away. That was 2 months ago. Things are different now. Not fixed, not fully, but in motion. We're seeing a couples therapist named Irene who has a talent for asking the questions we've been avoiding. Cal's mother and I haven't spoken since the post, which I expect will eventually become a different conversation, but I'm not rushing toward it. Some bridges need to be rebuilt from both ends, and I'm not going to start walking until I see her on the other side. Bridget's engagement party photo is still on Instagram. My mother-in-law never deleted it, which means it still exists as a record. A beautiful table, a happy family, a celebration that happened exactly as it was planned, without me. And my photo is still up too. A woman in a yellow shirt standing in front of sunflowers, in a light that was genuinely kind to her. The caption's still there. "Spent the weekend somewhere I was actually wanted." Turns out that changes everything. Because it did. Not in the way I expected, not in some dramatic reversal where suddenly I had the family I'd always hoped for, the warmth and the belonging and the inside jokes. That's not what I got. What I got was clarity. I got to see with my own eyes what the actual situation was rather than the version I'd been carefully managing in my head. And once you've seen that clearly, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to the softer, hazier version where things are almost fine and probably getting better. Knowing where you actually stand is painful. It's also, I've come to understand, the only place from which you can build something real. The mountains, the farmhouse, the sunflowers, the soup at Petra's kitchen table. Those things didn't save me, but they reminded me of something I'd been forgetting for a long time. That I was a person who existed outside of that family's approval of me. That I was warm and present and capable of joy and genuinely easy to be with when I wasn't spending all my energy trying to earn a place that should have already been mine. I didn't need them to see that. I just needed to remember it myself. If any part of this story felt familiar to you, if you've ever sat at a table where you weren't really invited, smiled through a conversation where you weren't really welcome, loved someone who let it happen because it was easier, I want you to know that the moment you stop cooperating with that is the moment things begin to change. It won't be comfortable. It will almost certainly cost you something. But the life on the other side of that choice is yours, completely. In a way the other one never was. Hit the like button if this story stayed with you. And if you're willing, leave a comment. I'd love to know your favorite moment. Or if something here resonated with your own experience. There are more stories coming, and I'm grateful you're here for them. There's a version of the story where I delete the photo, where I see Cal's name on my screen, hear the tightness in his voice, and quietly take it down because it's easier. I almost did. I had my thumb over the button for a long moment. And I think about that moment a lot. Not with pride exactly, but with a kind of recognition. Because what I was really deciding in that moment wasn't whether to keep a photo up. I was deciding whether I was going to keep pretending. That's the thing nobody tells you about being slowly excluded from someone's life. It doesn't feel like one big event. It feels like a long series of small moments where you choose to look away. The conversation that stopped when I walked in. The family group chat I wasn't added to. The birthday trips I wasn't invited on. Each one on its own felt too small to confront, too easy to explain away. And so I explained them away over and over for 6 years, until I had built an entire story in my head about a marriage that was basically fine and a family that was almost there and a situation that was probably improving. It wasn't improving. It had never been improving. It was exactly what it looked like, and I'd been working overtime to not see it clearly. What Elaine did, organizing a celebration, seating her whole family around a beautiful table, and simply not including me, was the end of a pattern, not the beginning of one. What Cal did was worse in a different way. He didn't exclude me with hostility. He excluded me with silence. He let his mother's discomfort matter more than my dignity, over and over, because it was easier that way. And he told himself that keeping the peace was the same thing as being a good husband. It isn't. Those two things are not the same thing, and I think somewhere he knew that, which is why he couldn't look me in the eye when I asked him directly whether he'd ever fought for me. He hadn't, and the honest answer to that question cost him more than any argument ever would have. I've thought a lot about what actually changed when I posted that photo. Not in terms of consequences, the calls, the DMs, Bridget's message, the business fallout. I mean what changed inside me. And I think what happened is that I stopped cooperating with a version of my own life that wasn't true. I stopped performing okayness I didn't feel. I stopped filling the gaps with extra warmth so no one would notice how cold it was on the other side. That kind of honesty isn't comfortable. It disrupts things. It asks something of the people around you. It asks them to either rise to it or reveal that they won't. Cal is trying to rise to it. I don't know yet if he'll get there. But at least now we're both looking at the actual situation instead of the one we'd agreed to pretend was real. The sunflower photo is still up. I leave it there not as a weapon, but as a record. A record of a Saturday morning when I stood somewhere I was genuinely wanted, in good light, and looked exactly like myself. That's worth keeping visible. If he's been in a room that felt smaller than it should have, with people who made you feel like a guest in your own life. I hope something in this story helped you name it. That's usually where it starts. Not with a grand gesture or a dramatic exit, just with finally, clearly calling a thing what it is.